I'm Lori, 32 female. I live alone in a city apartment that I worked incredibly hard to afford, spending my days translating complex data into understandable trends for a tech firm. For the last 4 years, my life has been a cycle of work, sleep, and budgeting, all centered around a single goal: giving my younger brother, Ethan, the future our parents couldn't. It turns out that future was a lie, built on my sacrifice and propped up by the people I trusted most in the world. This is the story of how I funded a fantasy and how I took back every single cent. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. It all started on Ethan's high school graduation day. He was a bright kid, always quick with a joke, but his grades were average at best. He wasn't lazy, he just lacked direction, drifting through his teenage years with a shrug and a smile. My parents, Deborah and Mark, worried constantly. My dad sold cars, a profession where charm could mask a lack of substance, and he saw too much of himself in Ethan. My mom, a quiet woman who worked part-time at the local library, just wanted her son to have stability, something she felt she never quite achieved. They had always struggled financially, living paycheck to paycheck, and the dream of sending a child to a 4-year university seemed like a distant, unattainable luxury. That's where I came in. I was 10 years older than Ethan, and by the time he was graduating, I had just been promoted to a senior analyst position. My salary was comfortable, and I had been diligently saving. At his graduation party, amidst the lukewarm potato salad and celebratory cake, my dad pulled me aside. His expression was a familiar cocktail of hope and desperation. "Lori," he began, his voice low, "your brother got into state university. It's a good school, a real chance for him. But we can't afford it, not even close." He looked down at his shoes, a gesture of defeat I'd seen 1,000 times. "We don't know what to do." I looked over at Ethan, who was laughing with his friends, blissfully unaware of the financial storm brewing around his future. He was a good kid. He deserved a shot. In that moment, a wave of responsibility washed over me. I had always been the practical one, the planner, the one who cleaned up messes. This felt like the ultimate mess to clean up, the generational cycle of financial struggle. "I'll pay for it," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I had fully processed their weight. "I'll cover his tuition." My dad's eyes welled up with tears. He hugged me tightly, whispering, "You're saving him, Lori. You're saving his life." The arrangement was simple. I didn't want my parents or Ethan to handle the money. I've seen how they managed their own finances, and I wasn't about to let tens of thousands of dollars slip through their fingers. I insisted on making all payments directly to the university's bursar's office. Each semester, I would get the bill, log into the university's online portal, and pay the full amount for tuition and fees. It gave me a sense of control and security, knowing the money was going exactly where it was intended. My parents readily agreed, saying it was smarter that way. Ethan, when they told him, called me, his voice thick with emotion. "Lori, I don't know what to say. I won't let you down, I promise." And so began my 4 years of sacrifice. Vacations were replaced with staycations. Dinners out with friends became a rare treat. I drove my 10-year-old car until the mechanic started greeting me by my first name. Every spare dollar was funneled into an account I mentally labeled Ethan's future. My colleagues would talk about their European holidays or new home renovations, and I would just smile and nod, thinking about the investment I was making. It was more important than any material possession. It was for family. The first couple of years seemed to go well. Ethan would call me with updates about his classes. He was majoring in business, a practical choice we all agreed on. He'd talk about a tough economics professor or a group project in marketing. He sounded engaged, enthusiastic even. "It's a lot of work, but I'm learning so much," he'd say. "I couldn't do this without you." My parents would echo his progress reports. "He made the dean's list last semester," my mom would announce proudly over the phone. "His father and I are just so thrilled. He's really applying himself." I received the tuition bills like clockwork and paid them without hesitation. The amounts were staggering, but seeing the official university letterhead and the breakdown of charges made it feel real and worthwhile. I never visited him on campus. It was a 3-hour drive, and frankly, I was usually working overtime to make sure the tuition payment wouldn't drain my emergency fund. ITR. Us did them. Why wouldn't I? This was my family. We were all working together to lift Ethan up. I would imagine him walking across the graduation stage, diploma in hand, and the pride would swell in my chest, making every sacrifice feel insignificant. In hindsight, the signs were there, small and easily dismissed. He was always a bit vague when I asked for specifics about his coursework. "Oh, it's just a bunch of boring theory stuff," he'd deflect. When I suggested I could come down for a weekend, he'd always have an excuse. "I'm swamped with midterms," or "my roommate's parents are visiting." I chalked it up to a young man wanting his independence, not wanting his older sister cramping his style. My parents, when I mentioned it, would just laugh it off. "You know how boys that age are, Lori. He loves you, he's just busy." The lie was a carefully constructed ecosystem, and I was its sole source of funding. Each payment I made was another brick in the wall of their deception, a wall so high I couldn't see the comfortable, lazy reality they were all living in on the other side. They weren't just letting Ethan fail, they were actively helping him pretend to succeed, using my money, my hard work, and my love as the currency for their deceit. I was investing in a future that didn't exist, pouring my life savings into a ghost, and the people I was doing it for were the very ones holding the smoke and mirrors. The truth, when it finally came, wouldn't just be a shock, it would be a demolition. The day the illusion shattered was a Tuesday. It was a completely unremarkable day, which made the gut-wrenching discovery feel all the more surreal. My company had recently acquired a smaller firm in a town about halfway between my city and the state university campus, where Ethan was supposedly in his final, triumphant year. I had to drive down for a day of integration meetings, a tedious but necessary part of my job. The meetings were scheduled to last all day, and I left home at the crack of dawn, armed with a travel mug of coffee and a podcast. The meetings were as dull as expected. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my brain was numb from spreadsheets and synergy talks. We finished a little earlier than planned, and as I walked to my car, I felt a wave of exhaustion. The thought of the 90-minute drive back home was unappealing, so I decided to grab a strong coffee from a local place to power me through it. I pulled up my Maps app and found a highly rated independent coffee shop called The Daily Grind just a few blocks away. It looked cozy and had good reviews, a perfect place to decompress for 20 minutes before hitting the highway. I walked in, the smell of roasted coffee beans and baked goods instantly calming my frayed nerves. The place was bustling with a late afternoon crowd, students with laptops, friends catching up. I joined the short line, scanning the menu board, trying to decide between a latte and a cold brew. When I got to the front, I gave my order to the cashier without looking up from my wallet. "Just a large black coffee, please." "Coming right up," a familiar voice replied. My head snapped up. My heart stopped. Behind the counter, wearing a green apron smeared with a bit of chocolate syrup, was my brother, Ethan. For a split second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It was a glitch, a mistake. It couldn't be him. He was supposed to be 45 minutes away on campus, probably in a macroeconomics lecture or a senior seminar. He wasn't supposed to be here, in this random town, serving coffee. He hadn't recognized me yet, his head down as he grabbed a cup. But I saw him clear as day. It was his messy brown hair, the silver ring he always wore on his thumb, the easygoing way he moved. He looked up to ask for my name for the order, and his eyes met mine. The color drained from his face. His friendly, customer service smile froze and then crumbled. "Laurie," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hiss of the espresso machine. I couldn't speak. It felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the impossible. What was he doing here? Was this a weekend job? But it was a Tuesday afternoon. An alarm bell, loud and deafening, started screaming in my head. What are you doing here, Ethan?" I finally managed to stammer. He glanced around nervously at his coworker, at the customers behind me. He looked trapped. Hey, what a surprise. I'm just earning a little extra cash, he said, his voice strained and unnaturally high. This is my friend's uncle's place, helping out. The lie was so flimsy, so pathetic, it was almost insulting. It's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, I said, my voice flat and cold. Shouldn't you be in class? Panic flashed in his eyes. I have a break. My classes were all in the morning today. He was fumbling, sweating under the cafe lights. His coworker shot him a confused look. The person behind me and Elle. Ini cleared their throat impatiently. I was causing a scene, but I didn't care. Nothing else mattered. Let's talk outside, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Now. He practically ripped his apron off and mumbled something to his coworker before following me out onto the sidewalk. The crisp autumn air did nothing to clear my head. My hands were shaking. Start talking, Ethan, I demanded, and don't you dare lie to me. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a crack in the pavement as if it held the answers to the universe. It's not what it looks like, he muttered. Really? Because it looks like you're working as a barista when you're supposed to be a full-time student at a university I have spent over $100,000 on. So please, tell me what it's really like. He finally looked at me, and his face was a mask of guilt and fear. Look, I took this semester off, he confessed. Just to save up some money, I was going to go back in the spring. The lie was better this time, more plausible, but the alarm bell in my head was still ringing. If he had taken the semester off, why hadn't he told me? Why was he hiding? And more importantly, the tuition for the fall semester had been paid. I had paid it myself just 2 months earlier. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I felt sick, physically ill. I paid your tuition for this semester, Ethan. I transferred nearly $15,000 to the university in August. Where is that money? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. He had no answer. He just stood there, speechless, the living embodiment of my worst fears. The truth was there, hanging in the air between us, unspoken but suffocating. He wasn't just taking a semester off. This was bigger. This was so much bigger than a little break. How long, Ethan? I asked, my voice trembling with a rage I didn't know I possessed. How long have you been lying to me? He just shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He didn't have to say anything. I could see it in his pathetic, guilty face. This wasn't a new development. This lie had roots. And in that sickening moment, standing on a random sidewalk outside a coffee shop, I realized my entire sacrifice, the foundation of the last 4 years of my life, was built on nothing at all. It was a house of cards, and my brother had just revealed himself as the one holding the fan. The only question left was who else knew. Who else had been watching me pour my life into a lie and said nothing? The answer, I suspected, would be even more painful than the betrayal standing right in front of me. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the traffic or the route I took. My mind was a chaotic storm of questions and white-hot anger. Ethan had confessed in broken pieces on that sidewalk. He hadn't just taken a semester off. He had never even finished his first year. He dropped out after the first semester of his freshman year, 4 years ago. For 4 years, I had been making payments to the university for a student who didn't exist. For 4 years, my brother, my parents, my entire family, had been playing me for a fool. When I stumbled into my apartment, I didn't even take my coat off. I dropped my keys on the table and immediately called my mother. My hands were still shaking, but my voice was eerily calm. I needed to hear it from her. I needed to hear the lie one more time before I shattered it forever. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and cheerful. Lori, honey, how are you? Your father and I were just talking about how proud we are of Ethan, getting ready for his final exams. The casual, practiced nature of her deception was like a physical blow. It was so easy for her. He's not at school, Mom, I said, the words coming out like chips of ice. There was a pause on the other end of the line. What do you mean, sweetie? Of course he is. He's probably buried in the library. No, he's not, I continued, my voice gaining a hard edge. I just saw him. He's working at a coffee shop in Northwood. He told me everything. He told me he dropped out 4 years ago. The silence that followed was heavy and damning. It stretched for an eternity. I could hear her breathing, a little shaky now. When she finally spoke, the warmth was gone, replaced by a nervous, placating tone. Now, Lori, there's been a misunderstanding. He was going to tell you. We were all going to tell you. When? I shot back. After graduation. After I'd paid for the cap and gown for a ceremony he was never going to attend. When, exactly, were you planning on telling me that you've been letting me pour my life savings down the drain for 4 years? It got complicated, she said, her voice weak. He failed his first semester, Lori. He was too scared and ashamed to tell you. He didn't want to disappoint you. We didn't want to disappoint you. Disappoint me, I laughed, a harsh, humorless so. That scared me. You think this is about disappointment. I have sacrificed everything for him. I gave up vacations, I put off buying a new car, I haven't updated my savings account in 4 years because every extra cent went to him. And you knew the whole time. I could hear my dad's voice in the background, muffled. Is that Lori? What's going on? My mother must have put the phone on speaker. She knows, my mom said quietly. She found out about Ethan. Then my dad, Mark, the man who had cried and told me I was saving his son, got on the line. His voice was blustery, defensive. Lori, you need to calm down and listen. Your brother made a mistake. He dug himself a hole, and we were just trying to help him figure out a way to get out of it without causing a big family drama. A big family drama? I was screaming now, pacing my small living room like a caged animal. You call this a drama? This is a grand-scale, long-con fraud, and you were his accomplices. Where did the money go, Dad? I want to know where every single dollar I sent for the last 4 years went. Now, it wasn't like that, he stammered, his car salesman charm failing him completely. The tuition money, well, Ethan needed to live. He had rent to pay, car insurance. He needed to eat. The audacity of it knocked the wind out of me. I sank onto my couch, the phone pressed hard against my ear. So you used the tuition money as his personal allowance? While I was working 60-hour weeks, you were all living on my dime, pretending he was a student. Did you have a good laugh about it? Did you toast to my gullibility at dinner? Don't be ridiculous, Lori, my mom cut in, her voice taking on a wounded tone as if she were the victim. We never laughed. It was very stressful. We were just trying to protect our son. He was so lost. Protect him? You enabled him. You taught him that it's okay to lie, to steal from his own sister, as long as it makes his life easier. What kind of lesson is that? I was beyond angry. I was in a state of profound, soul-crushing disillusionment. These were the people who were supposed to love me, to have my back. Instead, they had viewed me as a resource, a walking ATM with no feelings or future of her own. I asked them about the dean's list and the updates on his classes. The answers were a pathetic tapestry of more lies. They had fabricated all of it. They would ask Ethan for a plausible-sounding course name, and my mom would relay the good news to me. They were a team, a well-oiled machine of deceit designed to keep the money flowing. Ethan would use the tuition funds I sent each semester to pay his rent and bills for the next 6 months, working his part-time barista job for pocket money. They were all in on it, from the very beginning. My dad tried one last time to smooth things over. Look, we know we handled this badly. We're sorry, but he's still your brother, we're still your family, we can figure this out. No, I said, the single word cutting through his bluster. There is nothing to figure out, you made your choices. The 3 of you decided that my financial security was less important than Ethan's comfort. You decided my trust was a fair price to pay for avoiding a difficult conversation. I stood up, feeling a strange, cold resolve settle over me. The shock was hardening into something else, something sharp and focused. I have to go. Lori, wait, my mother pleaded. I hung up. I disconnected the call and blocked their numbers. I blocked Ethan's number. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the quiet hum of the refrigerator the only sound. For years, I had believed I was the strong one, the pillar holding up my family's future. But I wasn't a pillar. I was the foundation they were systematically digging out from under, all while smiling to my face and telling me how grateful they were. They had made a conspiracy of silence their family bond. And I, the outsider, had just been handed my eviction notice. But they were mistaken about one thing. This wasn't over. I wasn't just going to walk away. They had made a critical error in their otherwise meticulous deception. They forgot who I was, a data analyst. My entire career was built on finding patterns, uncovering anomalies, and following the money. And I was about to turn those skills on them. For 2 days, I did nothing. I called in sick to work, citing a sudden migraine which wasn't far from the truth. My head throbbed with a toxic mix of anger, betrayal, and a grief so profound it felt like a death. I oscillated between crying fits and periods of numb, silent rage. My family had not just lied to me, they had stolen from me. They had stolen my money, my time, my trust, and my future. The vacations I never took, the down payment for a house I'd put on hold, all of it had been sacrificed for a lie. On the third morning, I woke up, and the grief had been replaced by a cold, clear purpose. Crying wasn't going to get my moan. It wasn't going to teach them a lesson. Action would. My mind, trained to see logic and process in chaos, started to fire on all cylinders. They had made one monumental mistake in their scheme. They had forgotten that I never gave them the money directly. Every single payment, every semester for 4 years, was a direct transaction from my bank account to the university's official payment portal. I had the receipts. I had the digital paper trail. I spent the entire day gathering my evidence. I logged into my online banking and downloaded every statement from the past 4 years, using a highlighter tool to mark each of the 8 tuition payments. The total was sickening, $118,432. Seeing the final number in stark black and white made my stomach churn, but it also solidified my resolve. I then went through my emails, searching for the payment confirmation receipts from the university. I found every single one. Each email was a tidy, official record with a transaction ID, a date, and the name of the registered student, Ethan. The question was, what happened to the money? Ethan had dropped out after the first semester. So for the subsequent 7 semesters, I had paid tuition for a student who was not enrolled. Where did the funds go? Did the university just keep it? That seemed unlikely. Surely their system would flag a payment for a non-active student. My theory was that Ethan, knowing the payment was coming, had somehow manipulated the system. Perhaps he was re-enrolling each semester just long enough for the payment to be processed and then immediately withdrawing, triggering a refund. But where would the refund go? It wouldn't come back to me because I wasn't the student. It would go to him. This was my leverage. This was their mistake. They had committed fraud not just against me, but against a major educational institution. The university would have records of his enrollment status, his withdrawal dates, and most importantly, any refunds issued. The next morning, I dressed in one of my most professional work outfits. I needed to project confidence and seriousness. I wasn't a hysterical, wronged sister. I was a concerned party in a significant financial discrepancy. I called the university's main line and asked for the director of student accounts. I was eventually transferred to a man named Mr. Coleman. "Mr. Coleman, my name is Laurie," I began, my voice steady and measured. "I'm calling about a series of payments I've made to the university on behalf of my brother, a student named Ethan. I have reason to believe there has been a serious case of fraudulent activity, and I need your help to understand the situation." I expected to be met with bureaucratic resistance, to be told they couldn't discuss a student's account with me. But the word fraud has a way of cutting through red tape. Mr. Coleman's tone immediately became serious. "I see. Can you provide me with the student's ID number and your relationship to him?" I gave him all the information. I could hear him typing on his keyboard. "Yes, I have his file here," he said after a moment. "And I can confirm we have received regular tuition payments from an account under your name." "Mr. Coleman," I said, taking a deep breath, "I believe my brother has not been an enrolled student at your university for quite some time. Can you confirm his current enrollment status?" There was another long pause, more typing. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now laced with concern, "according to our records, Ethan officially withdrew from the university in January of his freshman year. He has not been an active student here for almost 4 years." Even though I knew it was true, hearing it confirmed by an official sent a cold shock through me. "And yet," I pressed on, "you have continued to accept my tuition payments for him every semester since then. Can you explain that?" "This is highly irregular," he said, sounding genuinely perplexed. "Let me look into the transaction logs. This may take a moment." I waited on hold for what felt like an hour, my heart pounding in my chest. This was the moment of truth. When Mr. Coleman came back on the line, his voice was grim. "Okay, I think I see what happened here. This is a loophole in the system I've never encountered before. It appears your brother was reapplying for admission at the start of each payment period. This would generate a temporary student account and a bill. The payment would be accepted, and then he would formally cancel his application before the final enrollment deadline. Because he canceled within the official drop ad period, he was entitled to a full refund each time." "And where was that refund sent?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "The refunds were issued via direct deposit to the bank account he had on file," Mr. Coleman confirmed. "His personal checking account." I closed my eyes, a wave of vindication washing over me. There it was. The entire scheme laid bare in the universe. City's digital records. He wasn't just lying, he was actively manipulating a university's administrative system. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was wire fraud. "Mr. Coleman," I said, my voice hardening, "my brother and my parents knowingly conspired to defraud me of over $100,000, using your university as the vehicle for their crime. I made every payment in good faith for a service, an education, that was never rendered. The university accepted funds for a student who was never truly enrolled. I believe I am entitled to a full refund, not from my brother, but from the university." There was a stunned silence. "Ma'am, that's a very serious allegation," he finally said. "It is," I agreed. "And I have the bank statements and payment confirmations to prove every word. He exploited a loophole in your system. A system that should never have allowed payments to be processed and refunded in such a manner for 4 consecutive years without raising a single red flag. I believe the university has a degree of liability here. I paid for a service you did not provide." I could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he considered the legal and financial implications. A lawsuit, even one he might win, would be a public relations nightmare. A student's family bilking their own daughter using the university's systems? It was a scandal waiting to happen. "I understand," he said slowly. "Let me be clear, the university does not take fraud lightly. I need to escalate this. Can you email me copies of all your documentation? I will present this to our legal and finance committees. I can't make any promises, but I will personally look into this." As soon as we hung up, I drafted a professional, detailed email. I attached every scanned bank statement, every payment receipt. I created a spreadsheet outlining the dates, the amounts, and the corresponding transaction IDs. I presented an airtight case, not as a heartbroken sister, but as a financial analyst outlining a clear and undeniable pattern of fraud. I hit send, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of power. They had left a paper trail, and I, the analyst, was going to follow it all the way to justice. The game had changed. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a plaintiff. The week that followed was one of the most stressful of my life. I went back to work, moving through my days like an automaton. I excelled at compartmentalizing, and I channeled all my focus into my projects, building firewalls in my mind to keep the emotional turmoil at bay. During the day, I was Lori, the reliable data analyst. At night, I was Lori, the architect of a quiet, methodical reckoning. My family, after my explosive phone call, had tried to reach me relentlessly. Voicemails and texts piled up, a desperate chorus of apologies, excuses, and pleas for me to just talk to them. I ignored every single one. There was nothing to say until I had a resolution. My silence was my new weapon. Mr. Coleman from the university was true to his word. He emailed me 2 days after our call to confirm he had received my documentation and that it was under review by the university's Internal Affairs Committee. He was professional and discreet, never admitting fault, but assuring me the matter was being treated with the utmost seriousness. The waiting was agonizing. I found myself checking my email every 5 minutes, my stomach twisting into a fresh knot each time. I knew my case was strong, but I was fighting a massive institution. They could easily bury me in legal fees or simply deny responsibility, leaving me to pursue a messy, painful lawsuit against my own family. The thought of facing them in a courtroom was nauseating. I wanted my money back, but I also wanted this to be clean. I wanted the institution they had used as their tool to be the one to deliver the consequences. Finally, 10 days after my initial call, an email from Mr. Coleman landed in my inbox. The subject line was simple: regarding your financial inquiry. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked it open. The email was cautiously worded, full of corporate speak about irregular account activity and system vulnerabilities. But the conclusion was crystal clear. It stated that, after a thorough review, the university had decided to reverse the transactions in question. As a gesture of goodwill and to avoid a protracted dispute, they were offering to refund the full amount of the 7 fraudulent semesters directly to me. That was over $100,000. They would, in turn, be pursuing the matter with Ethan directly to reclaim the funds that had been wrongfully refunded to him. The university was essentially going to become his debt collector. A wave of relief so powerful it almost brought me to my knees washed over me. I had done it. I had won. I read the email 3 more times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. They were giving me all of it back, tucked into tea. The final paragraph was a sentence that made me smile for the first time in weeks. For your records, a formal notification of this reversal and the resulting balance due has been mailed to the student's address on file. This was the linchpin of my plan. I didn't just want the money back. I wanted them to understand the full weight of what they had done. I wanted them to face the consequences not from me, the emotional sister, but from a cold, faceless institution. A formal letter from a university's legal department detailing a 6-figure debt would be a far more effective wake-up call than any screaming match I could initiate. I replied to Mr. Coleman, formally accepting their offer and thanking him for his professionalism. I provided my bank details for the wire transfer. The plan was in motion. Now came the second phase, the confrontation. I couldn't just disappear with the money. They needed to see me. They needed to face me, knowing I had unraveled their entire scheme and turned their own plan against them. I needed one final scene to close this chapter of my life. I unblocked my mother's phone number and sent a single, simple text message. I want to have a family dinner. My treat. This Sunday at 7 p.m. at the Oak Room. Be there, all of you. The Oak Room was the fanciest restaurant in my parents' town, the kind of place they only went for major anniversaries. It was a power move designed to set the stage. I was no longer the struggling saver. I was the one in control. My mother's reply came almost instantly. "Oh, Lori, yes, of course. We would love that. We have so much to talk about. We miss you so much." The fake cheerfulness was nauseating, but I saw it for what it was: desperation. They thought this was their chance to apologize, to smooth things over, to absorb me back into the family dynamic where my role was to provide and forgive. They had no idea they weren't coming for a reconciliation. They were coming for a sentencing. The next few days, I prepared. I went to my bank and spoke with the manager, explaining the situation and the expected incoming wire transfer. I made arrangements to have the funds immediately moved into a high-yield savings account and a series of secure investments, accounts my family had no knowledge of. I was building my new foundation, one that was entirely my own. When Sunday arrived, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years. I drove to their town, the town I grew up in, but it felt like a foreign country. I chose my outfit carefully, a sharp black dress that was professional and severe. No warmth, no softness. When I walked into the oak room, the hostess led me to a quiet corner table I had reserved. I sat down, facing the entrance, and waited. I was the architect of this evening, and every detail had been planned. They thought they were coming to a dinner. In reality, they were walking into a meticulously constructed trap, and I was holding the string. The main course for the evening wasn't going to be steak or fish. It was going to be the cold, hard truth. They arrived together, a united front of nervous guilt. My father, Mark, was wearing a suit that was a size too tight, a forced smile plastered on his face. My mother, Deborah, clutched her purse like a shield, her eyes darting around the elegant restaurant, landing on me with a look of desperate hope. And between them was Ethan, looking pale and gaunt. He had lost his usual carefree swagger. He looked like a child who had been caught and was now being dragged to the principal's office. They slid into the booth, the air thick with unspoken words. "Laurie, honey, you look wonderful," my mom started, her voice trembling slightly. "This is so nice of you." "It's the least I could do," I replied, my tone neutral, giving nothing away. I motioned for the waiter. "Let's order. I'm sure we're all hungry." They were clearly thrown off by my calm demeanor. They had expected tears or yelling. This quiet, cold control was unfamiliar territory, and it made them uneasy. We ordered our food in a stilted, awkward silence. My father tried to fill the void with small talk about his work at the car dealership, but his words just hung in the air and died. As soon as the waiter left, the dam broke. "Laurie," my dad said, leaning forward and resting his arms on the table. "Your mother and I, and Ethan, we are so sorry. There's no excuse for what we did. We know we broke your trust, and we want to spend the rest of our lives earning it back." "We were wrong," Ethan mumbled, staring at his water glass. "I was a coward. I messed up and I let it spiral and I dragged them into it. It's my fault." My mother just nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "We love you so much, Laurie. We were just trying to protect your brother from his own mistakes. We never meant to hurt you." I let them talk. I listened to their carefully rehearsed apologies, their narrative of misguided protection and cowardly mistakes. They had clearly spent the law. Spent 2 weeks refining their story, casting themselves as flawed but loving parents, and Ethan as a scared kid who made a bad choice. They were trying to frame it as a messy family problem, one that could be solved with apologies and hugs. They still didn't get it. Our appetizers arrived, and I took a deliberate, slow bite of my salad before speaking. "You didn't just hurt me," I said, my voice low and even, cutting through their performance. "You didn't just break my trust. You committed a crime." My dad's face hardened slightly. "Now, let's not be overly dramatic. It was a family matter." "Was it a family matter when you conspired to take over $100,000 from me under false pretenses?" I countered, setting my fork down. "Was it a family matter when Ethan repeatedly filed fraudulent applications to a university to exploit a financial loophole? Because the term for that isn't family matter. The term for that is fraud." Ethan flinched. My mom looked horrified. "Laurie, please don't use that word," she whispered. "Why not? It's the truth," I said, looking directly at Ethan. "You lied to me. You too," I said, gesturing to my parents, covered for him. "You all benefited from my money while I put my own life on hold. You talk about earning my trust back. Let's talk about something more tangible. Let's talk about paying me back." My dad scoffed. "Laurie, be realistic. We don't have that kind of money. Ethan certainly doesn't. It will take him the rest of his life to pay you back." This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was their assumption, that they held the power because they were judgment-proof. They thought the money was gone, and my only recourse was a lifetime of futilely trying to collect from them. I allowed a small, cold smile to touch my lips. "Oh, I'm not worried about you paying me back. I've already been reimbursed." 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in stunned confusion. "What are you talking about?" my dad asked. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. I slid it across the table toward Ethan. "I believe this arrived for you in the mail yesterday." Ethan's hands trembled as he unfolded it. It was a copy of the official letter from the university. His face went completely white as he scanned the contents, the formal language, the accusation of financial irregularities, and the final, brutal total at the bottom, $103,616 due immediately to the state university. "What is this?" my mom demanded, trying to snatch the paper. "That," I explained, my voice as crisp as the restaurant's white tablecloth, "is a bill. As it turns out, when you commit fraud using a major educational institution as your middleman, they take it very seriously. I contacted the university's finance department. I provided them with 4 years' worth of bank statements and payment confirmations. I showed them the undeniable proof that they had accepted payment for a service they never rendered to a student who was not enrolled. I explained how their flawed system had been exploited." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. They were very interested. To avoid any potential legal unpleasantness for them, they were more than happy to refund me the full amount for the 7 semesters you stole. "The wire transfer cleared my bank account yesterday morning. As far as I'm concerned, my financial relationship with this family is over. My books are balanced." I looked at Ethan. "Yours, on the other hand, are not. That debt isn't mine anymore. It's yours. You owe the university, not me. And I can assure you, their collection department is far less forgiving than I ever was." The silence was absolute. My parents looked as though I had just detonated a bomb in the middle of the table. They stared from the letter to my face and back again, their minds struggling to catch up. They hadn't just been outmaneuvered, they had been rendered completely irrelevant to the equation. You went to the university," my dad sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "You involved outsiders in our family business." "You made it their business when you used their name to steal from me," I said calmly. "This is the consequence. You wanted to protect Ethan from his mistakes? Fine. Now you can protect him from a 6-figure debt owed to a massive institution with a team of lawyers. My part in this is done." I placed my napkin on the table, my meal untouched. "Enjoy your dinner," I said, standing up. "It's the last thing I'll ever be paying for." I walked out of the restaurant without a single look back, leaving them to sit with the bill for a meal and the bill for their lies. Walking away from that table felt like shedding a skin I had been wearing for 32 years. The skin of the responsible older sister, the dutiful daughter, the family safety net. The air outside the restaurant felt cleaner, lighter. For the first time, my future felt like it belonged entirely to me, no long. Mortgaged to someone else's potential or held hostage by their deceptions. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I just listened to the sound of the tires on the road, each rotation taking me further away from the life I had left behind. The aftermath was exactly what I had expected, a deluge of frantic, angry, and pleading messages. My father left furious voicemails, accusing me of betraying the family, of being cold and cruel. "They're threatening to send him to collections. They could ruin his credit for life. How could you do this to your own brother?" he yelled into the phone. He still didn't get it. I hadn't done this to Ethan. Ethan had done this to himself. I had simply removed myself as the buffer between his actions and their consequences. My mother's messages were tearful and manipulative. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Laurie," she cried in one voicemail. "Family is supposed to forgive. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but you are destroying us over money." She framed my actions as a cold financial transaction, completely ignoring the years of emotional manipulation and deceit that had precipitated it. To her, the money was the issue, not the trust they had systematically dismantled. Ethan himself sent one long, rambling text message. It was a mix of apology, self-pity, and blame. He was terrified. The university was not playing around. He had to either set up a payment plan with a monthly amount he could never hope to afford on a barista's salary or face legal action. He begged me to intervene, to call them and tell them it was a mistake, to take on the debt myself again. He was asking me to step back into the role they had created for me, the family fixer. I deleted the message without replying. The first few months were hard. There was a phantom limb quality to my life. I had spent so much of my energy, my thoughts, and my income focused on my family that their absence created a huge void. There were moments of intense loneliness and flashes of guilt, where the ingrained sense of familial duty would rise up and whisper that I had gone too far. But then I would look at my new bank statement. I would look at the travel websites I was now free to browse. I would look at the listings for condos in my neighborhood, a dream I could now realistically pursue. And the guilt would fade, replaced by a fierce, protective sense of self-worth. This was the cost of freedom, and it was worth every penny. I used some of the money for therapy. I needed to understand how I had allowed myself to be so thoroughly deceived, how I had ignored the small red flags along the way. My therapist helped me see that my identity had become so enmeshed with being the capable one that I was blind to the possibility that the people I was helping were actually taking advantage of me. It was a painful but necessary lesson in setting boundaries. About 6 months after the dinner, I heard through a distant cousin that Ethan had been forced to declare bankruptcy. The university's debt was too much for him to handle. He had to move back in with my parents, his future financially crippled before it had even begun. My parents had to take out a second mortgage on their house to cover his legal fees and help with his living expenses. The easy life they had all been living on my money was officially over. Now they were truly supporting him, and they were feeling the crushing weight of it, a weight I had carried for them for 4 long years. I felt a pang of something, not pity, but a kind of sad, detached acknowledgement of the mess they had made. They had sacrificed their daughter's trust and their own financial stability for the sake of their son's comfort, and now they had lost it all. I ended up buying that condo a year after I walked out of that restaurant. It's a beautiful 1-bedroom place with a small balcony that gets the morning sun. It's mine. Every floorboard, every appliance paid for by me for me. I've started traveling too. My first trip was 2 weeks in Italy, a vacation I had dreamed of for a decade. Standing in front of the Colosseum in Rome, I felt a sense of peace I had never known. I don't know if I will ever speak to my family again. The wound is too deep, the betrayal too fundamental. They didn't just lie about money, they lied about who they were. They showed me that their love was conditional, predicated on my utility to them. Rebuilding a relationship on such a toxic foundation seems impossible. For now, my freedom is more valuable than a hollow forgiveness. I invested 4 years of my life in a lie, but in the end, I managed to cash out with the most valuable asset of all, myself. They took my money, but I took my life back. And that is a price I am more than willing to pay.